Suffocate slide guitar music that comes out every Monday through Friday. Live at 5 on the Evil Hippie Network YouTube. Check us out, subscribe, type in iNewsWire, Roy Blecker. You'll see my nice, smiling, shining face. Of course, we'll have Susan Shelley today at the bottom of the hour, as she had something to do yesterday, so we'll get her thoughts on all the happenings every day. Chad Bianco, Rob Bonta, that whole ballot counting thing of that, the press has jumped in wanting to see the sealed court orders and this and that. Just count the freaking ballots. We can't get to that. We'll have a report on that. Lately, the fraud in California is getting bigger. Bill Essayl, U.S. attorney under Donald Trump, just announced a $50 million bust. 76-year-old lady paying $300 to people that are getting, what, $6,000? She's getting $6,000 a month. Hideous. And Newsom says, "Oh, I've taken care of all the fraud." No, it's Gavin Newsom's empire of fraud that's been going on for far too long. Of course, as they say, Time magazine came out with a plan to the end of the war, but as we usually do, lead. Story of the day, breaking news. Pam Bondi is out as U.S. Attorney General. And none too soon, as we say. It's, let's say, very interesting. The amount of angst that this woman has caused. It's been spectacular. The amount of foobars she has done. I couldn't be happier that she's out. Todd Blanche has been named acting U.S. attorney. The search goes on. We shall see how that works out. But there was a lot of issues surrounding her. The Epstein files, the lack of prosecutions, her closeness with Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, who hopefully is the next one out the freaking door, and the histrionics of her on TV all the time. She looked like a psycho chick testifying at Congress instead of doing her job. This one came out in the Daily Mail, and a lot of people are debunking it, but Trump's reasoning for the sudden dismissal comes as part because President Trump believes Bondi tipped off Eric Swalwell, her longtime friend, about the FBI's efforts to release investigative documents related to his relationship with Fang Fang, the Chinese spy. Whether that was it or maybe the last straw, at least she's gone. And unlike Kristi Noem, which got another job, the True Social post that came out this morning said she's moving on to the private sector to do a job much needed, yada, yada, yada. Which means we wanted you out of here. There's going to be a lot of speculation talk. Lee Zeldin, EPA Secretary, has been mentioned. Not bad. A little question about Lee Zeldin, but he's done a really good job at EPA. So I can't necessarily count him out. Harmeet Dillon, U.S. Assistant U.S. Attorney under Civil Rights, I think would be an absolutely great choice. Along with, and we'll get to him with the fraud thing here in a minute, Bill Essayl and or Ed Martin as Deputy Attorney General. I don't think Trump is going to get rid of Todd Blanche, but like what they did with the FBI director when they did, they put the Missouri guy in from that as a co-deputy FBI director. So if we could get a Harmeet Dillon, I wouldn't be opposed to Ron DeSantis would be a good pick as Attorney General. I'd put Matt Gaetz in there myself, back in there, just for the theater of it. But I still think Matt Gaetz would be the most effective Attorney General of that. He wouldn't screw around. He'd be like Bill Essayl is out here, and we'll get to that again in a second. But we will see how the picks, or who Trump chooses and who may get by the Senate. Again, Daily Mail put out Pam Bondi breaks her silence. She says she's going to cooperate in the next month, making the transition over. She said, I led all this, the greatest reduction in crime and all this noise. But she just didn't get the job done. And that was the bottom line. The first one out of the chute, again, was the Epstein files, as it was mentioned. That was a total disaster, and it still is. It's still a stain on the Trump administration. That whole thing, I'm going to release them this week. I've got them all stacked up on my desk, and then the little binders of material that was already a lease, it was given to a few people, and then it went precipitously downhill from there. But at least that part is over. It's been rumored, thought of, FBI Director Kash Patel may be next. I know there has been a push to get Tulsi Gabbard out of Director of Intelligence, but Trump seems to be sticking with Tulsi on that. If he gets Kash Patel out, I'll be good. Okay, then we'll see where it goes. Maybe we'll get some movement across these other situations. We'll get to the big Trump Essayl $50 million hospice bust in SoCal. The latest in the trials of Bona, Bianco, and Ballots. And of course, we'll get to Susan Shelley at the bottom of the hours. It's going to be one wild ride. Even wilder from here on out. Yes, it is. Can't say, Trump's full of surprises on that. They were actually going to roll that out tomorrow, but it started busting. I guess they had the meeting just before he went on the little war update, and we'll hopefully get to that here in a second. The whole enchilada. We ran the City Journal's Chris Rufo piece. Gavin Newsom's empire of fraud. They said 180 billion in the last few years. I say it's more like 400 billion. Bill Essayl, our U.S. attorney out here in CA, exposed a $50 million hospice bust, maybe the most egregious one yet. Here's the KTLA 5 report.
Forced to eliminate fraud. Officials say they have a zero tolerance policy for anyone out there accused of defrauding American taxpayers.
This morning, we executed Operation Never Say Die. Federal agents from multiple agencies descended on fraudsters throughout Southern California, executing multiple arrests and search warrants. We arrested 8 defendants, including medical providers such as nurses and doctors. We are announcing charges against 15 separate individuals who engaged in healthcare fraud, resulting in losses close to $60 million.
Now, these arrests include the owners of hospices. The first assistant U.S. attorney, Bill Essayl, alleges billed taxpayers millions of dollars to serve the terminally ill who weren't sick at all. More than $50 million in intended healthcare fraud losses charged. Those defendants include 3 nurses, a chiropractor, a psychologist. Officials claim that they ran fraudulent hospice care facilities that drained Medicare by using individuals who didn't have terminal illnesses as beneficiaries, all facing years in federal prison. According to the Justice Department, each year the U.S. loses billions of dollars to healthcare fraud, with American taxpayers picking up the costs. We're talking spikes in premiums, co-payments, and also taxes. Operation Never Say Die is going after those who abuse the system. In this case, allegations that the defendants turned hospice care into a money-making operation. 2 of the defendants, for example, a 66-year-old psychologist, Gladwin Gill, and his wife, Amilu Gill, a nurse from Covina,
Oh, we decided to stop itself in the middle of the deal. 60 million. One, some lady's in prison. Out of prison, she gets her husband to start another one. This stuff is almost unbelievable. But this is all happening under the Trump administration here in California. And as they said, the fraud in California is going to make the 20 billion or 50 billion or whatever it is in Minnesota. We're going to make them look like a bunch of pikers. 15 arrests today, 85% recovery rate. That's impossible. What, 3 weeks, I think, is the average stay people have in hospice? I mean, there is no care, they're not treating you, you've run out of options. When you're in hospice, it's, you got days, weeks, maybe a couple months left. Very few, like 1% or something, only survive more than a year once they're in hospice. Very low percentage. To have an 85% recovery rate. That wasn't raising any alarm bells anywhere. Of course not in California, because who knows how that whole 60 million was getting distributed. From the California Post, SoCal doctor at the center of the hospice fraud probe flaunted luxury lifestyle on social media. On top of that, it shows you don't have to be a brain surgeon to pull off fraud in California. In fact, you can advertise it. Until Trump and Essayl came in here, it was like free reign and Dr. Oz. When Oz pointed out what Newsom, he's a racist. It's absolutely telling what goes on here. One of the other stories that's been, and Trump gave the wartime update yesterday. And something that struck me, and most people know I'm not a big, by any means, Susie Wiles fan. But this caught my eye. This was posted this morning. Vera Bergensen, Susie Wiles has expressed concerns aides were giving Trump a rose-colored view of how the war was being perceived, domestically telling Trump what he wanted to hear and urged them he would be no more be a featherweight, a forthright with the boss about the political and economic risks. David Pine writes, the White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles is reportedly urging White House aides to stop censoring reports of the U.S. military losses and Iranian military success, as well as plunging poll numbers and gas price trends from the president to make him realize what a disaster his great power war with Iran has become. And if Susie Wiles is saying this to Trump and he's been getting hosed, and I believe this all stems from a Time magazine article, Inside Trump's Search for a Way Out of the Iran War, by Eric Cortesella, he lays this out. That, and this is where it comes from, according to his sources, Susie Wiles and a small group of aides told the president that the longer the war dragged on, the more it would be a threat to public support and Republicans' prospects in the midterm elections. Hear, hear. And I don't care if it's Susie Wiles or whatever aides are doing it. It's about time somebody was telling him the truth. I think you're seeing that with the exit plans and the speech last night, and we're going to be out of there in 2 weeks. It even indicates in this article that they were military, or somebody in there was telling him, oh, we're going to control the Strait of Hormuz and that. When Tulsi Gabbard, J.D. Vance, Raisin Cain, Joint Chiefs of Staff were saying that ain't going to happen. And I think you see that by Trump saying, hey, we're done. You know, China, whatever, UK, if you guys want to, you guys rely on the oil over there. You guys go in and take it. So they said Trump told them a couple days ago Iran was willing to make a deal on all this stuff. Hegseth, it says, was surprised by the barrage of retaliatory attacks. Well, what did you think they were going to do? Again, seems to add a lot of credence to this article. And again, I'm no Susie Wiles fan by any stretch of the imagination. And maybe, and I don't care who it was, if forces in are finally getting to Trump and telling him the truth on this deal, and we get out of this whole mess that we got into in Iran. Again, let's look for the positives that are going on. Pam Bondi's gone. Hopefully Kash Patel's the next one out. One update. On this Bonna, Bianco, and the ballots in Riverside County, and so forth. Here's a small part from the CBS 2 report. Here we
Battle
go.
over hundreds of thousands of ballots seized by Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco. He says he's investigating alleged election irregularities.
Several groups, including California Attorney General Rob Bonta, have sued to stop Bianco and to get the ballots back. CBS LA political reporter Tom Waite, Bianco fired back late today, and he wants Bonta thrown off the case.
Right, and we're getting some new insights into all this because we're getting our first look at some of the court documents filed with the California Supreme Court. So in that court filing we were just talking about with the state Supreme Court, Sheriff Bianco claims he had probable cause to seize the ballots through criminal warrants, but those warrants remain under seal. And tonight, CBS Los Angeles, along with other media organizations, are asking a court to unseal those warrants and reveal what Bianco told the court to secure them. Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco, in a filing with the state Supreme Court through his attorney, says the Attorney General should not be able to shut down his ballot investigation, which is based on a finding of probable cause of a crime. The court filing was obtained by Democracy Docket. Bianco seized more than 600,000 ballots from last fall's Prop 50 special election based on information from a citizens group claiming there were 45,000 questionable votes. The Riverside County Registrar disputes those claims, saying the citizens group's tabulation was based on faulty methods and information.
Everything is on hold given the three different lawsuits, right? Two in the California Supreme.
Okay, Jose. You were sitting there with the hearings. Bud. Chair Karen Spiegel, and you didn't say anything. Just what, a week or so ago, or a month ago, when we had the big 2-hour hearing, the Board of Supervisors, which you're a member of, is not letting this go until the numbers are reconciled. Well, let's get to reconciling the numbers. Let's do the count. Okay. It's going to come out, whatever it is, it comes out. Why all the blocking?
Supreme Court and one in Superior Court.
Bianco's attorney in the filing says Sheriff Bianco, who is also a leading GOP candidate for governor, agreed to pause the count of the ballots until judges weigh in on the lawsuits from the state attorney general, Rob Bonta, and UCLA's Voting Rights Project. The lawsuits argue Bianco illegally seized the ballots using criminal warrants, which remain under seal. CBS Los Angeles, along with other media organizations, filed a motion to unseal those warrants.
To me, it is surely unprecedented. I, from the very beginning, asked about the legal validity of that. I've never really seen law enforcement be involved and insert itself in the electoral process.
Sheriff Bianco says he's not reviewing ballots, he's just counting them. Critics say ballot counts should be done by nonpartisan elections officials. Bianco has a history of making claims about election.
So let's go back. At the press conference, Jose and Clarissa the Drunk Cervantes and the crew were down there at the ROV, about 3 miles from the studio here that I attended. And I said, hey, bud, didn't you see, you put Sheriff Chad, Riverside Police Department, in charge of chain of custody of the ballots and the election task force that the Board of Supervisors, set up. Well, I ain't aware of that. What were you doing? Did you have your finger up your butt during the meeting? It was there. It was explained. Art Taneco, the registrar of the voters appointed by under the control of the Riverside County Board of Supervisors, told you. Why is he in charge of chain of custody, making sure the ballots are there, but he can't count the ballots? Law enforcement has never been involved in that. You involved them, Jose. You didn't even know. You claimed that. Well, I don't know nothing about the election. We have an election task force to secure all this stuff we put out there. Huh? I don't know. I don't know. But he knows the law, and you can't have this. Jose Medina especially is a fraud. And Victor Manuel Perez, you can join him in the fraud if now you want to question it. It's simple. They can see, open up the court orders, I could care less. Let's count the ballots. Count the votes. If they're accurate, an ROV, like I said, I'm done with it. It's fine. The Board of Supervisors, they never mentioned the Board of Supervisors is not comfortable, is still questioning or saying the numbers aren't reconciled. Karen Spiegel, the chair of the Riverside County Board of Supervisors, do you hear that in the CBS report or the New York Times report or the Riverside Record report or whomever's doing all this suing? No. Karen Spiegel, a month ago, go look at the tape. We ran it on the show. She said, we're not putting this to bed until these numbers are reconciled. If they're reconciled, she and the Board of Supervisors would have put it to bed. Are you on with it once it gets going? Or... You got it.
20 seconds.
You got it. As Jesse said, we'll be on Mighty Met 1490. Hopefully Susan Shelley will call in. And we'll get her on today. She had something to do yesterday.
5 seconds, and Susan's on the line.
You got it. Well, see, there we go.
Yeah. The following is a paid program. Views and claims expressed are those of the program producer and are not endorsed by this station. Opinions expressed are not necessarily those of radio station KMET, its management, employees, or affiliates.
There's that funky slide guitar music that comes on every Monday through Friday, live at 5:30 on the Mighty Met 1490 AM, broadcasting all over the Inland Empire and the aforementioned AM band. Join your vast video audience in the Evil FB Network, YouTube. Check us out, subscribe, type in iNewsWire Roy Bleckert. You'll see my nice smiling, shining face. You can get our archives and all that. Go back and chop me up to pieces if you want, or whatever I say, or however you want to do it. Enjoy yourselves, get a laugh, all that good stuff. Man, what a day. Pam Bondi's out as Attorney General, fired precipitously by Donald J. Trump today. The empire of Gavin Newsom's fraud grows ever deeper, that we were reporting on from the Chris Rufo report yesterday. Bill Essayl just made 15 arrests of $60 million in hospice fraud. That the case, if the case is even 10% of what he laid out in the press conference, man, we've been getting ripped off like farther than we can ever imagine. We went on the new news coming out about Trump and the military advisors giving him blowing a bunch of smoke up his rear end about the Iran war. He's finally getting the real facts of what's going on and maybe why he's saying, hey, we're going to be out of there in 2 weeks. And of course, Bonta, Bianco, and ballots and Riverside County and all that. But as we usually do on a Wednesday, but again on Thursday, we have the famed editorial writer, columnist for the Press Enterprise, San Bernardino Sun, Inland Daily Bulletin, Redlands Daily Facts, more important to me, Vice President of Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, Susan Shelley. Welcome to iNewsWire with Roy.
Thank you so much, Roy. Great to be with you.
Let's start out what kind of came out of, it was rumored the other day, but it kind of came out of left field. Trump just putting the axe to Pam Bondi. What say you, Susan?
Well, I'm still reading up on what happened. Apparently, just before he went on television to give the speech about the Iran war, he had a meeting with her in the Oval Office and told her she was out. Reports from, I think, Fox are saying it was a big blow-up meeting and she begged for the job. That's all I know. There's a report also that she leaked information to Eric Swalwell that the Justice Department and the FBI were about to release documents related to his relationship with a Chinese spy. That's very interesting. The whole thing is very interesting. It's like we're living in some kind of weird soap opera lately in this administration. I haven't recovered from finding out what happened to Kristi Noem's husband. Good Lord.
Oh, God. That cracks. I mean, other than, for some reason, that whole thing just cracked me up. On top of that, Brian Noem, Kristi's husband, spending $25,000, or that's what the report is. No wonder they sold. What did they sell for? Billions of dollars? They just sold OnlyFans on that. What's even more disturbing to me is there's all these guys paying that amount of money to watch or look or play this game. I mean, it seems like it, again, like a soap opera is probably putting it nice, Susan.
Well, one of the things that they usually talk about when they do background checks before cabinet appointments is a complete check of anything that someone could be blackmailed over, anything that could cause influence improperly behind the scenes. Did no one find any of that? Did Kristi Noem not know about it? Did she not talk about it? That's just very strange, but certainly it's the kind of thing that could be used to blackmail someone in a very powerful position. So it seems silly on the surface, but it's pretty serious.
I'm wondering if that's why, maybe that was one of the reasons, a month ago she got taken off of being, Homeland Security chief and all that, Maybe it came to, maybe the Trump administration or somebody in it got intelligence that, hey, this thing's going to bust here somewhere, or we got a potential problem, like you say, with, could be used to bribe, or compromise her. Maybe that was, maybe it wasn't the only reason, there was a lot of other issues going on. Maybe that was like the final straw in the deal, Susan.
Politics is very hard, and the president has to staff an administration, and he also has to essentially pay back people who supported him at critical moments when he staffs an administration. It's tough, and I think overall he's done a great job in his second term, but it's tough. I think he's wise to make aggressive changes where it's needed and not be afraid to do that.
Another story, we covered it yesterday, of Gavin Newsom's Empire Fraud that came out by Chris Rufo of that. And he said $180 billion in fraud over a few years. Steve Hilton said like it could be closer to $250 billion. I say it's easily, now it's a third. I'm saying of the $349 billion proposed budget, I'm saying a third of it, $116 billion of it is fraud. And the latest one is Bill Essayl made the big arrest today, $60 million in a hospice fraud deal. That it like I said earlier, if it's 10% of the case that Essayl talked about, 85% recovery in a hospice rate when your average stay in one's like 3 weeks, because you're basically, you are terminal when you go. You're no treatment. They're just trying to make you comfortable till, you're looking at the roots of the grass. So to have an 85% recovery rate, Gavin Newsom and all, Rob Bonta, you've been finding and doing all this fraud, that didn't ring any alarm bells when you're paying out all this money. What say you, Susan?
Well, it's an absolute failure of oversight, because this was all flagged in 2022 by the California State Auditor. And the state of California said they were going to crack down on the licensing of these companies. And apparently the way that it's been going is that there's a lag in the oversight, so they would go a few months, 6 months or a year or whatever they could get away with, and then close and give the license to somebody else, or however they would transfer that, and that would end the investigation, and then they'd have another 3, 6 months, a year, or whatever, to do it again. California should be able to do better than that and find these things, and clearly the federal government just has found these things and is bringing these people down. But California has a terrible record with fraud investigations, And it really makes you wonder if that's intentional and there's just people on the take who are getting a piece of it.
Do you really have any evidence that the state of California is lax in finding fraud? I find that astonishing, Susan.
You know, the only thing more lax than California is the national media finally coming around to see what we've all been reporting for years. I just saw a clip from 60 Minutes. I guess they're coming to town to tell us about the bullet train. You know what? The bullet train's not going well. How do you like that? Thank goodness for CBS News. How would we know?
The only other one on fraud and everything, and I know you've delved into the election fraud, all across that, and then we have this whole deal going on here in Riverside County with Bianco, Bona, and ballots, and now the New York Times and Cal Matters and a bunch of them are suing. We want to see the judge's deal. And Jose Medina, our supervisor's mouthing off about that when he put Chad Bianco in the election task force in charge of these things and in charge of custody of ballots and stuff, but he can't count the ballot, and he didn't even know it when I questioned him when he had his stupid news conference last week. But this whole thing is getting ridiculous. Why can't we, Karen Spiegel, the chair of the Board of Supervisors, in that big 2-hour hearing on all this, still with the whole discussion, and she said right at the end, we are not ending this until the numbers are reconciled between the 611, the team Temecula says, and what ROV says. So they're on Board of Supervisors. You never hear this in the reports or anything like that. Just let Chad count the ballots. And I've said, if Chad counts 657,000 ballots like Tanaka says, I'm done. That's it. I'm good. Nothing there. If not, then we got to figure it out. Why not let him count? Why all the angst of him? I think I know why. I think I know. You probably know why. Why all the angst in counting the ballots, Susan?
Well, I have seen this over and over again in L.A. County and everywhere else. When someone raises a question about the validity of the count, instead of saying, well, by all means, let's count and give everyone reassurance that it's accurate, every single Democratic election official and elected official overseeing elections jumps up and sues to stop it from happening. What county was it that wanted to do a hand count of ballots, and the legislature raced to its desks and passed a law prohibiting the hand counting of ballots? One of the Northern California counties, one of the smaller ones. They wanted to hand count ballots. They didn't have 5 million of them like L.A. does, so they could do hand counts. And the legislature literally passed a law to make it a crime to do that. And now they've passed a law to make it a crime for a city to require voter ID. There's kind of a pattern here. The only thing that really explains it is the premise that they're just as crooked as a dog's hind leg, and all these elections are suspect. And every time somebody gets close to looking at the paper trail, by the way, we were promised a paper trail with these electronic ballots, these electronic voting machines or ballot marking devices or whatever you want to call them. We were promised there was a paper trail, but they didn't tell us we wouldn't be allowed to see it. And even the sheriff isn't allowed to see it, and this is all very concerning.
That's the whole issue. Team Temecula says, and that's where the discrepancy is. They said per Art Tanaka, Register of Voters records, he cannot show you 657,000 pieces of paper with votes on them or sent in. He can only show you 611 by his numbers. And he's never really reconciled that. He just says, oh, they're miscounting and stuff. Well, then, okay, Chad's got the ballots. I would even say, let's just not even count the yeses or no. Let's see if there's 657,000 pieces of paper like there should be by law that we passed in 2006. Is it, what harm could be done in that? That's totally boggling my mind, Susan.
Well, I think you hit it. We all know what they're hiding, and they don't want anyone to see it. But how can you have confidence in elections when this kind of thing is going on? It's entirely possible to double scan the paper ballots. It's entirely possible to have a software program double scan them without even anyone touching them. It's entirely possible. In Los Angeles in 2020, when they first put these ballot marking devices into service, they had a conditional approval from the Secretary of State because they were new and they weren't quite ready yet. The condition was there had to be tape over the USB ports in the back office servers. Why? Because somebody with a thumb drive could put in malicious code and tamper with the election. So they made the equipment authorized for use with this condition that somebody had to put tape over the USB ports. This is not a secure system, and the people who have put it in place, including our now Senator Alex Padilla, who was Secretary of State and who did this, they have a lot to answer for. And instead, they only want to yell about Trump and blame him for their own failings.
Switching gears, your column this week, the Newsoms have a new shakedown initiative. Susan Shelley.
Well, this one got under my skin because it was Women's History Month. And all of a sudden, Governor Newsom is announcing an executive order to help women get into the financial industry and have a role to play in the nation's financial ecosystem. And I'm like, what is this? It's not 1950 when women couldn't get credit in their own names. What is he doing? So what it turns out to be is that last fall, his wife, Jennifer, the first partner, created a women's wealth advisory council. Women's Wealth Advisory Council. Already it sounds like graft. And I guess it wasn't doing very well at convincing people to give it assets to manage. So here comes the governor in March with an executive order that essentially directs his administration to come up with recommendations in conjunction, in cooperation with the First Partners Wealth Council. So she's going to have input in this about how women-headed firms can have a bigger share of asset management. In other words, fees for managing large sums of money. And in particular, California public pensions. And I just looked at that and I thought, this is the most corrupt thing I've ever seen. They're going to have to pay the First Partners' friends to recommend these women-headed financial firms, and then they're going to have to pay to recommend that the CalPERS and the others give a share of the management fees to these firms. This is an absolute shakedown. It's so corrupt, and it's right in front of everybody, and he's calling it Women's History Month in honor of that. So yes, it got under my skin.
I could see. I mean, I guess what they do, and it must be, the only thing I can think of at this point, with the fraud investigations and all that and the rest, the only thing they must be doing up at the Scoundrels of Sacramento is just figuring out new ways they can rip us off. They can come up with this, like that whole Capitol. We build them brand new office buildings for all them yo-hos. 3 years later, we got to spend who knows $2, $3, or $4 billion more on top of that. It's stunning. It's stunning what they come up with on all this stuff. I mean, you just couldn't normally come up with this. You have to really try to get to things like this, Susan.
It's very imaginative. I have to agree with you. It's so crooked, and I don't have any more patience for it because there is so much corruption and so much waste. They're burning through tax dollars. And every single ballot is another set of tax increases. And really, it's so wrong what's being done to the people of this state. It's just not cute anymore. We have got to get a governor who is going to clean this up. And if we don't, I don't know how much longer anybody can stay in California the way it's going.
Everyone better pray I was right a year ago. That this comes across in June. And we guarantee it on that. Again, you're right. And I mean, obviously from the down ticket stuff and all that, and, it looks like, again, my friends on the left side of the political spectrum, insiders, are now getting really nervous on that. Less than a month before ballots go out, and they really don't have They don't. They're looking at this like really. This a lot of them. This is the first time any of them have been put in this type of situation on that, and they really don't know how to react on it. Which I'm kind of cracking up about it, saying, now you know how it feels. With your other column this week, get ready for the new Hollywood visitors tax. Like I say, what do? They got to be just sitting around thinking of new ways to screw us, Susan Shelley.
Yes, they sure are. The city government of Los Angeles is in deficit and totally dysfunctional and wasting money hand over fist and failing to do basic things like pick up the trash and patrol the streets and basic public safety and sanitation. Basic public services. So that leaves the businesses in Hollywood, which is a big tourism district, to pay for the services themselves. So several years ago, they agreed to do a property-based assessment on all the businesses. So all the property owners pay, it's on the property tax bill, a certain amount that something like 77% of the money, they raise about $8 million a year, and about 77% of the money goes to sanitation and security. They're called ambassadors, but still, some kind of security. Well, now that's not enough because the city of Los Angeles won't do anything about the vagrancy problem or the crime or the drugs or the rest of the things that make the sidewalks impassable for tourists and filthy for everybody. They won't do anything. So now there's a plan for a tourism improvement district on top of the property-based business improvement district. So that's two. And the tourism improvement district proposal calls for a gross receipts tax on top of the city gross receipts tax. So these poor businesses, and this includes restaurants, theaters, bars, parking lots, souvenir shops, everything in the little tourism district of Hollywood. So basically from like the Hollywood Bowl down south of Sunset and from the 101 freeway to the edge of West Hollywood, where the Walk of Fame and all the theaters are, and Pantages and the El Capitan movie theater and the ArcLight cinemas. And it's a great little district that should be magnificent, and instead it's gritty and awful. And there are no public visitor facilities like restrooms or benches or anything. So this new tax is going to be paid by the visitors to Hollywood who are not all tourists. For instance, people who live in the area go to a restaurant, they're going to pay this extra 2 or 2.5% charge on their restaurant check. And if you buy a ticket to see a concert, a movie, a play, you're going to pay 2.5% on top of what you're already paying for those tickets. This is a tax on visitors who live in Southern California who are just taking advantage of really premier entertainment venues, and they're going to be taxed for it. And it's horrible. It's all because the city of Los Angeles won't do its job.
Something else on that. Just for a quick update, when do you get the official word that the Save Prop 13 Act is going to be on the November ballot?
Well, we are in what's called the random sample verification phase, which means they are verifying 3% of the signatures that came in each county, and all the counties are working on it, and we are part of the way through that. The last I looked, we had more than 200,000 verified signatures, and they had many more to count. I think April 21st is the deadline date for the counties to tell us. If we don't make it on the random sample, then they will go to a full check, and they'll verify every single signature. So we'll make it one way or the other, but if we do a full check, we might miss this year's ballot and be on the next one.
Okay, so the next update's coming, or we should know at least have a clarification on it by the end of this.
By the end of April. Yeah. By the end of April, we should know.
We got about a minute left. Tell them why they should join HJTA. Go.
Well, we have a very exciting year coming up. We have an election. We have a primary election. We are working so hard to inform everybody in California about these tax measures that you're going to see on your ballot. And if you want the information, if you want to be up to date on everything, so that when your neighbors call, you know what to tell them about the ballot, join the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. We're at hjta.org, hjta.org. And you can sign up for the free email alerts, but be a member of this great organization and strengthen your voice in this fight to save California. HJTA.org, the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association.
Thanks for being on. We'll do this again next week.
Thanks so much, Roy.
Susan Shelley, Vice President of Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association and columnist extraordinaire for the Southern California News Group. Man, we got a lot of work, a lot of positives. And I will agree, I was getting really shaky on Trump from the first of the year. Seems like maybe it took April Fools, shake him up or whatever. Even if it was Susie Wiles or whatever, which again, I have no great trust in, let me put that way. And even if the Time magazine is wrong about her doing it, as long as some in the administration have got a hold of Trump and said, hey, get back to doing what the people elected you to do. We need to focus on the economy, resolve this whole Iran thing, get out of there, get gas prices back the freak down, get the economy running. New Fed chairs coming in May, so, most likely interest rates will be coming down. That will stimulate the construction housing market, relieve people of credit card debt, to lower their debt because interest rates are coming down, and things like that, which will help the masses greatly. As much as we would like perfection, none of us are that, and we're going to hit bumps in the road, even Donald J. or anybody, just like you or I or anybody else. Culminating with today's news of him firing Pam Bondi. Hopefully, the rumblings that have been coming, Kash Patel is next. Hopefully, the forces that said, hey, don't get rid of Tulsi Gabbard, win on that, and she stays as Director of Intelligence. And we move forward because, as Susan just said, we've got a lot at stake, not only in California, but nationwide and a lot of states too. Nationally, of course, like our assembly here in California, the Congress turns over. All 435 congressional seats are up for election in November. So it's going to be a barn burner, 33 or 34 U.S. Senate seats, half of our Senate. A lot of things at stake here. And even on the national front, how effective Trump will be, obviously. Will we change directions here in California? Well, that's probably going to be answered in June. We'll see. Hopefully, Californians are starting to see the light. I'm trying to be nice again, which is sometimes difficult. But we'll see. I see, especially in the last couple weeks, I've seen a lot of things starting to turn in the right direction where you can start seeing some positive signs again. Just kind of like after, at the start of the year when Trump came in and Doge was going and we were, a lot of things were happening. The border was secured. And then, the wheels started bumping. Are you feeling that vibration? What is that? The canoe. The tire finally did almost blow here at the first year, but hopefully we're off the road, changed the tire, got a new one on there, and we're going to go onward and upward and get back on track here. And I know most everyone would appreciate that. I know I sure as hell would. We'll see. But let's try to look on the bright side of things instead of the doom and gloom all the time. Anyway, as we usually say at this time, mandatory, you're back here in 23 hours wide. You're the best darn show in the whole wide world. Till then, see ya.
All right. Have a great night.
You'll see ya.